Welcome everyone to CVGLS 3, Revenge of the Lawyers. We've done this in March, we've done this in April. This is the first year we've ever done it in June. So the last couple of years we've been worried about snow. This year I'm worried about all of us overheating. So when it comes to Chicago, you never know. My name's Hersemann. I am the co-chair of the Creative Arts Committee and the head organizer of CVGLS. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Friday to come learn about video games and law with us. I have a couple quick announcements before we get rolling. First of which, turn off your cell phones or set them on vibrate. We do have speakers today who deserve all of your attention, and we're also recording. So I love your ringtones, but our web viewers might not. Also, please feel free to live tweet during the event, share what we're doing on social media. The hashtag that we're using is CVGLS 2017, and you can follow us at CVGLS for Twitter. For all of our folks online, please tune in now. If you have any questions, please send them to us, and I'll be happy to relay those to our speakers after the fact. If you need MCLE credit, you can definitely sign up for that with the CBA today. And I would just like to thank the CBA for helping us with all of our CLE credit. I'd like to thank Jennifer Byrne for setting everything up, Chris Weiss for doing all of our video, Tom Caprel for working on our website, and Sarah Sexton for helping us with our amazing photo and all of our graphics and our great pixel skyline from Multivarious games. So with that as my quick introduction, I'd like to bring up our keynote speaker today, Adam Boyes. He is the CEO of Iron Galaxy Studios. He's got decades of experience working in publishing, video games, and the business of games. Everyone help me welcome Adam up.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing this fine morning? I don't know if I need that thing. This is my caffeine choice of the morning. I'm a soda person. That's weird, especially when you live in Dublin. I lived in Dublin for a year and a half. Every time they were like, "You want coffee or tea, sir?" And I would like caffeinated drink, and they're like, "Get out. Get out of here." So how many people here to start off are in game development? Show of hands. Handful. And how many are in law? Ooh, okay, let's go. So my name is Adam Boyes. As Ross wonderfully introduced me, I work at Iron Galaxy Studios. Moved back to Chicago 10 months ago to work there. Previously, this is my 21st year in the games industry. Started my industry experience in '96 at Electronic Arts up in Canada. I was a small farm town Canadian boy that applied once online to test video games. That was the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed vision that I had. And I got the job for $5.50 an hour. And here I am. How the hell did I get here 21 years later? A lot of different companies I've worked for through the years. Came to Chicago in 2003 to work at Midway, where I was a producer. I sort of moved from QA into production. After that, I left there, moved out to the West Coast to work at Capcom, where I was the head of product development there. And that was my first foray into sort of business development, working with contracts, working with developers in an active manner. I was sort of primarily internal until then. And then I became sort of more external facing. So most famously, I was the, as they call, I think the official term for me at PlayStation was a suit douche, because I was on stage schlepping all the goods at E3s for many, many years. It was super fun. I joined there in 2012 and just left recently. So that was my title, Vice President of Third-Party Relations and Developer Technology Group, which is a big, huge ball of words. This is a lot easier. So what that meant is I oversaw every single deal between PlayStation and every publisher and developer in the free world. Obviously, primarily ones focused in North and South America, but we were heavily involved in every single deal, partnership deal from a third-party perspective, as well as all the developer policies. So when I had started, PlayStation had a multitude of challenges. The biggest one is that people didn't like to work with them because they weren't very friendly to developers primarily. So we had a long sort of course of action to sort of transition the whole company on the sort of third-party relations side. When I joined, it was more of a call center, and we want to make it more of a business consultancy. So we sort of transitioned a lot of policies, a lot of procedures, and went and worked with a lot of people around the world. Now, the downside of working with a big company like PlayStation, especially as a public figure, is you get to be known as the corporate troll. A Sony pony, I guess, is the term that they use on the streets to make fun of people that are Sony fans. I was also known as the bad dad joke guy on stage. My favorite part is that I would often have people come up to me afterwards. My favorite one was Brendan from Oculus. He's the CEO of Oculus when it got acquired. and he came up to me, Brendan Uribe, and he said, "Hey Adam, you were great on stage. I love 50% of your jokes." But I played well with Canadians and Brits, so that I was proud of that factor. But most Americans I knew were like, "Okay, dude, just move on with the bad dad jokes." Gamer, so I was pretty well known as a person that actually played the games. I had a rule that I had myself. Any big deal that we did, I would finish the game in completion. So I would finish the entire game that we did the deal with. When I worked at Capcom, we had a rule that I would finish the last shipped game of any studio that we were about to do a deal with. And sort of my team also took that to heart. And that was sort of when you're able to sit down with a team and really know the work that they've done, very sort of like, closely, it sort of not only builds a mutual sense of respect, but also helps with, understanding where they come from. And the deal maker, the finger guns guy, which is kind of the more boring part, but obviously what we're here to talk about mostly today. So again, one of the side effects is people Photoshop you quite often. So this is some of the highlight reels. Once I left PlayStation, a lot of people called me a traitor because I'm now working for a game studio that works with Microsoft. So people just saw that as a huge sort of shot across the bow. And ironically, I've been working on Xbox basically games for the greater part of my career. So yeah, this is the negative side effect. The most depressing part of being a public speaker with a platform is you think afterwards, you're like, okay, I always say don't check the comments, and then I would cry myself to sleep after every E3. That's not why I left though. So a couple things that we did from a policy perspective and from just a troublemaking perspective. When Microsoft first announced their policy changes for what they were going to do with Xbox One of the things they talked about is you had to always be online. You could share with friends only within a certain group of you. We did a sharing video where you could share a PlayStation game with anyone. That's over 16 million views. Afterwards, our chief legal officer, who many of you probably know, came up to me and said, "Hey, it's so weird you never signed a performance agreement, so you have nothing to do with any of the revenues from that commercial." And I said, "Thank you. That's very nice of you to point that out." The other thing we often did was just point out discrepancies in policies. So at the time, Microsoft had a policy that you could only launch on Xbox first. You couldn't launch on another platform and then come over to theirs afterwards. So this is a tweet that I had on the right there. In the interest of transparency, I want to share a dev clause that lists which platforms you cannot release on. And then the list was empty. So that got a little bit of attention to sort of show the fact that we didn't have any of those sort of more stringent things. So that was at the start, of course, when PS4 hadn't been released and sort of we were rabble-rousing, we were the underdog. PS3 did well in the end, but obviously there were some challenges along the way. So it sort of started in that challenger mentality, and in the end launched and did pretty well. Just wanted to cover some of my personal favorite highlights. Got to bring back the Shenmue franchise, so we worked with Yu Suzuki to announce that on stage. That was an interesting deal because we basically teamed up with them as sort of a promotional partner, and that was a Kickstarter that was announced at E3 on stage to help them along. Came up with a concept for the PlayStation Experience, which was this big sort of crowd interactive basically like conference for fans and people. Like I'd been to a lot of different shows like PAX and even EVE Online's EVE Fan Fest over in Iceland. It really inspired me to do something more for the fans and the people. So we did that. And then obviously the big stuff, right? Star Wars partnership. So many different partnerships that we did, the Destiny partnership, Call of Duty, partnering with PlayStation. I was involved in architecting and executing all of those deals. From a business perspective, obviously work with our law team in a very deep manner. Many multi-day lock-ins, which is always delightful. My favorite moment of one of these negotiations was I was trying to, the two sides, the lawyer sides were speaking to each other, and I was trying to pop in a little bit of feedback of what about this, could we do it that? And my boss kicked me in the shin so hard under the table and said, "Adam, what law school did you go to?" And that kind of shut me up for a couple hours. But that was it was fun to sort of be part of that interaction. So that's why some of the lessons that I learned from these things I want to sort of impart upon you guys. Obviously also the independent game movement was something I was very, very proud of. We worked very hard with many, many developers around the world. As myself, before I joined PlayStation, I ran my own company for a couple years, which is a video game production company. We made independent games as well. And one was a Sour Patch Kids video game, which is kind of strange, called World Gone Sour. Actually, Patrick was my lawyer on that one. And it was basically we hit alpha, and we had submitted the alpha build to Kraft. It's just a crazy weird way to say it out loud. We submitted an alpha build to Kraft Foods, and they basically saw the quality of the game and was like, we're going to cancel the whole project. Because they didn't understand what alpha looked like. They didn't understand, even though we had sort of explained it to them. And I'll never forget it. I was downtown San Francisco on 3rd Street. I had just done an interview with IGN, and I was in my car, and they were like, we're going to cancel everything. And my whole company was basically built around this one game at this point. Right? It started just by myself when I left Capcom. I had, I think at the time, 3 contractors. And my hands were just shaking because I knew that I was about to drive home and not have any income, and my company was going under. And that feeling that I had in that moment was so death-defying, it was so sort of guttural, that when I went to PlayStation, I vowed that we would never allow that to happen to anyone else on the planet. And that's why, not only with working with publishers to ensure that they had fair and balanced partnerships and deals, but also us as PlayStation, right? We wanted to make sure that our benefit was sort of floating all boats in partnerships. And then if we did hear reports from developers that did get a raw deal from a publisher, we would apply extra pressure as the platform to ensure that they were being fair and balanced, because I didn't want anyone to ever feel that way that I did, because it was super messed up. So what we did is pivoted that negative energy that I personally experienced into positive ones, and really try to champion a lot of these independent games and help them sort of, especially on the commercial side of things. A lot of these studios are smaller teams that don't understand how to make games and how to promote them. I mean, they understand how to make games very well, but promoting them, building a commercial sort of strategy around it. So we sort of integrated ourselves in that to help them sort of build, whether it was like doing retail distribution. There's a multitude of things that we sort of added to their value proposition, and many of these went on. This is just a small list. And then we had, at one point at E3, brought out 9 different independent developers on the stage. We called the 9 for many years after that. And that sort of created this new buzz of like, hey, it's at E3, it's okay to show indie games, which was super fun. And I think that also brought the spotlight from console makers onto independent developers. So out of that, there are 5 deal lessons I wanted to impart on this team. Now, since most of you are lawyers, this is like inside baseball. You guys get the secrets. And for developers, write these down. Some of them are somewhat obvious, but at the same time, I think these are the 5. If I could say there's 5 things you need to take away from negotiating deals or doing a deal, these are the 5. So the first one, only do deals that you can afford to walk away from. And what I mean by that is if you can't afford to walk away, then you have no negotiating power. So if you are, when I say something like this, if you're at the end of your rope and you have no other opportunity to survive as a studio except to do this deal, obviously take it. But if you expect to negotiate and get great terms and you can't afford to walk away, that's the worst case scenario. We at Iron Galaxy right now, we've been in business for 8.5 years. We have 120 people across 2 studios in Orlando and Chicago. We have a very great business that we've been doing porting. We just announced a new IP that we've been working on, Extinction yesterday with Maxim Games. We've done works with Elder Scrolls Online, with Killer Instinct, with Street Fighter, with Batman, with Call of Duty. And that puts us in a situation where we are financially secure, and that allows us to be able to go into negotiations with a little bit of, we don't need to close a deal, so therefore we have a little bit of leverage. But it's really important to know that if you're not willing to walk away, you're not going to get what you want out of the deal, most likely. Unless the other people are really nice, and the worst secret about the games industry is it's a business, and people aren't nice when it comes down to it. So you can hope you find somebody that's nice, but chances are you need to be able to walk away from it. Everyone has a boss. I know this is a shocking thing. Most likely the people that you're negotiating with in that room are not the bosses. They have bosses, and usually their bosses have bosses. And so it's important to know the chain of command when you are negotiating a deal, because everyone can be sort of like, you don't want to go straight to their boss to sort of circumvent the process. But if you don't understand who's going to sign it at the end of the day and who has the ultimate authority to make a decision, then you can sometimes sort of like, wag your tail around trying to figure out what to do. Because oftentimes people think that, okay, whoever's in this room, the buck stops with them. But but oftentimes after the deal's done, or once you get to certain terms in the contract, it needs to be escalated for other people to sign off. And so understanding who all those people are. So very early in the negotiation phase, it's important for you to say, okay, who signs off after this one? Who is the ultimate authority to overrule or change terms? Help me understand the process. And when you have that, that allows you to have a tool set that you can not necessarily utilize, but just be aware of. When we did the deal with Supergiant Games, I was dealing with Amir Rao, who came from EA, a really, really smart guy. He always asked for all the sort of deepest details in the promotion. And I remember when we were doing the negotiations, after the contract was signed, he called me up and he said, I've never negotiated with the person that signed the contract. This is too weird. Please tell me there's another contract coming. I said, nope. I'm the guy that signed it. I'm the guy that you did the deal with. So at least he understood the chain of command. It was a lot easier. But most companies don't work like that. The third takeaway, deals don't get better with time, ever. Okay? So the longer you wait to close a deal, the more discussion there is behind the scenes, the worse it's going to get, always. Okay? So it's kind of like, if you're starting this conversation and you know that you need to get her done in let's say 2 months, chances are it's going to take probably 4 to 8 months. Who knows, right? Every single scenario is different, but they never get better with time. So try to be diligent. Vacations are hard, holidays are hard, but every time a time passes, 2 weeks, chances are nobody's working diligently daily on that contract on either side. And so when you get back to it, you're like, what do we mean when we put this comment on the sideline of this one? I think I was mad about this part, but now I'm not sure. So the faster you do it, the more engaged you are. And that's why I always say too, if there's time pressure, putting a time clock on the discussion is super, super important, or getting together with both parties in the same room with both the legal teams and the business teams together to make a decision and drive forward is the best case scenario. Lobbing back and forth red lines for 9 or 12 or 15 months don't work. And in the end of it, it's not going to be pretty. And then people are going to get angry because then people cycle out, new person's in, and they're going to look at it and be like, why the hell are we here? Let's just start from scratch, and then you're back to square one. Focus. So this is something that I see a lot of people do. Focus on your needs first. That is the most important. So oxygen, you need oxygen to survive, okay? You probably want some shelter. That's a nice second thing. And extras, if you want a boat, that's just put that in a different category for now. Most people that I see that start to go through a contract, they get on the phone, they go, let's start from the top. And that's never the best scenario. If you haven't reviewed that contract to understand exactly, coming out of this, these are the 5 things that I cannot live without, right? Having those in your mind is super critical. The wants then of like, these are things that I really, really want to succeed. And then the extras, just having that sort of column as sort of ones that you can give and take on is super important. But focusing on needs and then explaining to them, hey, this will not move forward unless these 5 things are sorted. Not to make demands right out the gate, but so they understand. And I think the other side, I think it's fair to you to say the other side, what are the most important things in this contract for your guys' perspective? And then if you focus on negotiating those things first, and then the wants second, and the extras third, you'll get to a conclusion faster. Oftentimes I feel like people are like, oh, let's just clean up the crap first. And that'll be easy. Could be little wins. But then already you get this emotional turmoil between, okay, I gave on this, but what did I get and all that stuff. So it's better to say, okay, these are the 5 things that we can't live without. Let's negotiate those things, because if we can't do those, there's no point in doing the rest of it. Because that's the truth. If you get everything your wants and extras, but the needs aren't met, and the contract goes to pot, then that means that you wasted a ton of time. So get the needs first out of the way, get them discussed, get them out in the open. And then the final thing, which is tough for a lot of people, because especially when you're in long negotiations, is always balance gives for gets, okay? So never give away something for free. This isn't, unfortunately, when you get to a contract negotiation perspective, this isn't about, friendships. This is about just, getting the best out of the deal. And so ensuring that everything that you give, there is something in return, because I've seen people walk in and be like, okay, we'll give up on these 3 things. No problem. And then the next breath they go, but this other thing we'd really like. I'm like, well, you just said you'd give up on those 3 things, so those are gone. You now have no negotiating power with those 3 things because you emotionally don't care about that, right? A line that I like to use is like, my boss needs this part in here. but I think I can talk them out of it. What else can we trade to make sure we get that? So that there should be no freebie gives when it comes to negotiations. If you are going to, it goes back, if you're willing to walk away and you're in a sort of fair timeline. So those are the 5 things. Know when to walk, all right? Know the chain of command, right? Whose boss is whose boss and how do you get it solved? Time is of the essence, so get her done quick. Deals never get better with time. Focus on needs first, wants, then your extras, and then never do a deal without trading gives for gets. So those are the 5 my BuzzFeed takeaways for this morning. Hopefully it kicks up some good conversation. Thank you all very much for your time.